see you there.
Something big is going on here.
From hunting ghosts to Bigfoot.
Paranormal, UFOs, true crime, and more.
We won't just be spouting articles.
I was researching for your entertainment.
The beginning of a new world.
The best guac you'll ever fucking eat.
True story.
It's basically like one day you walk outside and you see that the ants are playing with matches.
This is the Black Cat Report. See you on the other side.
The Night Prowler by AC/DC playing in the background. Detectives pounded the pavement trying to move hell and earth to find anything that would lead them to the Night Stalker. Entering each residence that was defiled by Richard Ramirez, the detectives, being horrified by what they saw, noted every detail. Pen to paper and shoe to mud. The detectives would track down and find the most notorious serial killer in the West Coast history. The man who brought fear to everyone, who would even make Satan say, "What is wrong with that guy?" It was time for the detectives to prowl.
Damn.
Whoop, whoop.
Welcome to the Black Cat Report and our final episode in the 4-part series on Richard Ramirez. I am Betsabe, your host. With me is Gil.
Hello!
Selena.
Hi.
And Joey.
I'm slowly becoming Richard Ramirez. Ha, I'm just kidding. Hey.
Oh no. The last few episodes have been so harrowing and dark that it is about time to shed some light on the heroes of the story. The heroes being the victims and detectives who brought him to justice. With all the details surrounding the case, we might end up doing a mini episode next week to give more details about the court case. As of now, we will be focusing on the detectives searching after the murders and assaults and how Richard was actually caught. So let's delve into it.
Yeah. I'm so excited. Like, Joey, you have to be feeling this times 10, but like, I'm so tired of hearing about Richard Ramirez, but at the same time, like, I need to know how this shit ends.
Yeah.
Like, I need to fucking know it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll be going into some of the actual. There were some murders that I did not actually include. He killed more people than you think, than is actually listed in some. So I found those, and they're added in to add part of the, evidence as well. So they'll be in there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Last episode, just reading about all the murders, it had me like very like uncomfortable for a little bit. Just like when I went to sleep that night, I just had like some weird dreams and I just felt very icky. So I'm kind of happy that we're finally moving on to, like you said, the true heroes of the story. Like, I want to hear more about how this guy
Was brought
basically
to justice.
was brought to justice. Like, thank God. So, moving into details, in the murder of Jenny Benko, the detectives noted that there were latent fingerprints on the window that Richard had opened after he took off his gloves to open up the windows. They found 4 prints, 3 that were able to be taken, and 1 that was smudged. To get this, they used a special kind of tape that locks onto the fingerprint and lifts it off. This was his first mistake in the first murder. In the next murder of Dell Okazaki, Richard left his AC/DC baseball cap
My
as he went
favorite
underneath
cap!
the garage door.
Oh no, not my swag. Not my swag. God damn.
Honestly, that would be me. Like, I would do stuff like that. Like, leaving my sunglasses.
He's like, fuck, I left my drip at the
Ugh.
house.
Yeah, his
I'm gonna
favorite
go
hat.
out tonight to cruise.
Yeah, I will be like leaving things all the time. Like, I could not be a murderer or anything because I would just leave either my phone, my sunglasses, my wallet.
This brings up
I would be the worst.
This brings up an
Yes,
important
Joey
point.
knows this.
You should only suspect people that are good at remembering the small things of being a serial killer. I'm just saying, if they're the type of person that always has their keys, never forgets their shoes, like always has their lunch, things of these natures, they are probably actually guaranteed to be a serial killer, and you should suspect them and call the authorities immediately, all of them.
How often are you out and about and realize you forgot your shoes?
At least
Gil.
once a month.
Me?
I
At
want
least
to know.
once a month. What are you trying to do to me right now, Selena? What are you...
And you're trying to say that somebody that doesn't lose their shoes has their shit together? It's not just a normal thing for people to know that they should be wearing shoes?
I've got no comment. Anyways, Betsy, you were about to tell us a fascinating tale of Richard Ramirez being captured.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a very forgetful guy for sure. I mean, he left his favorite ACDC baseball cap, and then he then left Maria Hernandez live as he thought she was dead, and seeing her, he was surprised she survived. Like, oh my gosh, she's alive. This will be the first description of Richard they will have as she saw his face clearly. Let's cover this again. He shot at her in the dark with a 22. This will be his second and third mistake.
Again, Gil, 22.
I feel like I've said enough, but I haven't said enough. Look, if you're hunting squirrel, 22, great. If you're hunting small birds and you're a 12-year-old that's just trying to terrorize animals for sport, 22 is great, right? You know, I don't know, in the Southwest, I don't think they have birds. They just have fucking lizards or something. Shoot it with a 22. It's fine.
Pterodactyls.
You have small pterodactyls, wingless pterodactyls.
I don't know what a 22
but, like,
is.
What the fuck are you doing trying to shoot a human being with a 22? Like, I will say, like, if he was a more competent serial killer, a 22 could be used to actually, like, really bring horror onto the person he's shooting. Like, if you used a 22 properly, it would do a bunch of fucked up shit to a human body. It would bounce around, cut and bleed through organs, like cause all sorts of issues. But this guy is a moron. He's shooting them straight on, expecting them to die. Like, he's taking headshots and they're not dying.
I mean, he also sent many of them to the hospital that later died. So he did do what you're
But
saying.
remember, he thought he was being protected by Satan, so all these little mistakes, he was like, whatever,
Satan to make the
will
caliber
take care of
bigger.
it.
Yeah.
No one will notice,
Like,
blah, blah, blah.
but like
Yes.
the thing is that I get the vibe from him that he thinks he's actually killing these people. Like, he doesn't know all the time.
But he did.
But
Well,
he doesn't
did
know
think
that, like, all right, retract. I get the vibe from him that he thinks that when he shoots them in the head, they're dead. Like, it's like an immediate thing. Like, he's pumped up with adrenaline. He's fucking in the house. He's like, bang, dealt with that one. Bang, dealt with that one. But, like, even in these situations, multiple times, like, there was that older gentleman who, like, got shot multiple fucking times and still managed to call 911 to, like, save his wife or try to save his wife. Right? Like, Richard Ramirez thinks that it's like a one and done kind of thing with the 22, which is like what has been irritating me, where I'm like, you are a fucking moron. Like, that's not how humans are
But
notoriously
he-
hard to kill. There's books about this.
But he he shoots multiple times. He's not one and done.
It depends on the murder. Joey, you're a resident expert. It depends on the murder, correct?
Anyways, moving on. On that same night of creeping on Xia Lin Yu, she passed away before they could get any information from her. But they got statements from two witnesses who had seen the murder from a distance. This will be another set of witnesses that got a look at him and could come at least close to identifying what had happened. Next, we have the murder of Vincent and Maxine Zazzara. As you know, he used a compound can or a compost can to step up and open the window in the back of the house. Doing so, he left a clear footprint of his obvious shoes, He also left footprints all along the back of their house. They also found that Maxine's eyes had been taken out, which would be a sticking point for the detectives. They would ask Richard's family if Richard had given the eyes to them, much to the disgust of the family. Detectives also were able to match the 22 bullets later on with things they found in his suitcase. Yeah, like he was definitely not smart about everything that he was doing, but again, his thought process was that he was being protected by Satan, so he didn't think ahead by, oh, like whatever, footprints or witnesses. His thought was like, Satan's protecting me, I can do whatever I want, no one's ever gonna find this, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. So later on, too, once he was caught, they couldn't rule out, Ruth and Julian and everyone of his family as part of like the crimes because he had been sending them stuff in the mail the whole time. And so they were like, oh, maybe he's sending them money. Maybe he's sending them, I don't know, pieces of stuff. Maybe he's giving them eyes. So they went up to the...
I'm sorry. I'm just
right?
picturing like ears and noses and toes like coming through the mail.
Mhm.
They're just like
They make a Frankenstein
Yeah.
person with all the
They're
stuff.
just like, they might be involved.
that-
It's just like it's a nose, it's an ear.
Yeah. Well, they might have known what was
Mm.
going on. But yeah, they asked Ruth first when they went to talk to them after they had taken him in, and she was like, no, I have not been given any set of eyes. And then they asked the dad later on too, Julian, and we're like, hey, did you receive a set of eyes? And he's like, I've done a lot of things in my life, and I've seen a lot of things in my life, but no, I was not giving a set of eyes.
I really hope that there was like what is it called? The Billy the singing bass or whatever that was like the fucking craze of the early 2000s where it's like dap 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 dap. Like I hope the whole time that the fucking like FBI or whoever was there and they were like, "Did you receive some eyes?" He's like, no, and then the motion activated fucking bass starts singing in the background and just has human eyes attached to the fucking bass. It's like ba 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 ba.
The next murder of William Doy and assault and rape of his wife Lillian Doy, Lillian described Richard as the man in black with bad teeth, of course, obviously, which will help the detectives get a better description of the murderer. They also found an obvious shoe print just like they found at the Cesares murder. Corrillo and Salerno could not get any information from this murder as it was in the Monterey Park area, and the police stonewalled them here. This would have helped the detectives put this together as another murder by Richard, but instead they had to wait a bit longer to be able to label him a serial killer. During the break-in the house of John and Susan Rodriguez, he left another obvious shoe print. This was now the calling card of Richard Ramirez, according to the detectives. On to Mary Louise Cannon's murder, the detectives found footprints on the rug. They couldn't tell if it was the obvious shoes, but they measure about the same as the other shoe prints. Richard had also left a knife on the bed next to her. They then found a napkin on the floor with blood on it. Detectives found on that napkin a shoe print of the familiar obvious shoe. There was a connection now between the other murders. The obvious shoe.
If the shoe doesn't fit,
Dun, dun,
then you
dun.
must acquit. Yep, those obvious
Modern day
shoes.
Cinderella.
Yep, gotta...
Cinderella, yes. Going on to the assault on the 16-year-old Whitney, the detectives found another obvious shoe print. This time they found it on the bed comforter. Another bloody shoe print. Whitney would eventually testify in court about the attack. Though some of the details she could not remember, she was instrumental in putting Richard behind bars.
And Whitney actually ended up marrying one of the detectives, Frank Salerno's son. Which is like a very kind of cute story.
Yeah.
The next assault of Sophie Dickman gave the detectives another description of an up-close view, and also she will always remember his voice. She worked with the police to give a description of him. She said he was tall, skinny, and good looking.
I can't think how weird it was that she said he was good looking.
Yeah, I mean, with his mouth closed, like, he could be handsome.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
true.
it's all about
Some
the
people
hair.
are really into that.
I mean, but he also has, like, cheekbones and, like, a chiseled jaw. Like,
Yeah, he
What-
had great cheekbones.
he's, like,
yeah.
you know, kind of handsome, but, like, if he opens his mouth, it's all rotted
Yeah.
garbage. So it's like, as long as he doesn't open his mouth, he's like, yeah, I would guess he would be attractive.
That's why they say calladito te ves más bonito.
Guess. What does that mean?
Which means you look prettier if you're quiet.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Damn!
It's a very sexist
Yeah,
joke.
keep that lip buttoned.
I want to ask,
yeah.
was she British? That's very key to this. My last name's Bentley. Okay, I can't get a more British last name.
Mr. Bentley.
But
I think she was born in the U.S. I think Sophie Dickman was born in the U.S.
Was she strongly influenced by British heritage? Because the British have this insane ability to completely see as invisible people's teeth. They could think people are the most gorgeous, handsome, beautifulest people in history, but then you see their teeth as an American, and you're like, that shit jacked up. Like, you were born with a fucking crowbar in your mouth. Something's wrong here. You know, and I'm talking about somebody with a gap and shit like that, you know, like me, right? And like, I'm just curious, was she British? Like, she needs to get that ancestry.com, which, speaking of which, we are now brought to you by Spotify for podcasters. But we'll get to that later.
Whee! So they found Sophie Dickman's house ransacked and handcuffs on the bed. That next day, the detectives were called to Joyce Lucille Nelson's house. This murder had much more evidence for them to find. They found the all too familiar obvious shoe print, but this time on her face.
Yeah.
They knew this was their man. They feared that she was handcuffed, and this was another coincidence between the rest of the murders and assaults. This was the time they found out the information for the Avia aerobic shoe. There were only 1,354 pairs made, and only 6 made their way to the West Coast. Only one was a size 11 and a half. This made it easier to narrow it down to one person. At this point, they had sent out this description, shoes and teeth, to all the other police departments around the LA area. He was now a wanted man.
I had to include that they sent out the description of his teeth because he's easily known by his teeth.
Yeah, you can smell him coming a mile away.
Yep.
It's like the SpongeBob episode where he eats that sundae with onions and ketchup.
Yes.
That's Richard Ramirez's life.
Yep.
Basically, yes.
You fucked up as an adult if you can be identified by your shoe brand and your teeth. Okay, I'm just saying you have fucked up so.
Right. At the Covenant murder, they found more obvious shoe prints on the patio and the hallway. Some kid gave details of all that happened at the murder. She described him perfectly and gave another description of the murderer, and this was the one that was released to the press. And every cop had this description on their dash. They also again found another Avia footprint in the back of the house. At the Nighting murder, they found pieces of a .22 bullet, which they matched later on with his gun in the previous murders. They matched up with the viciousness of the assaults, ransacking, and the way that Richard broke into the house with the previous assaults and murders as well. After the Petersons' assault and almost murder, they found again more, 25 shell casings and bullet holes. The only way they made the connection between the other murders and assaults was that he used the word bitch. which was one of Richard's favorite words. Also, they described him as wearing all black and that he was the same height as the Night Stalker.
When they describe this part and how they're connecting this assault and almost murder with everyone else's, they literally said the first thing that connected them to the other murders was he was just like when he was talking to her when he
Women.
was talking to the wife, he said bitch, and he kept saying bitch and bitch and bitch, and then they're like, oh, that's the same guy as the other murders, because he was notorious for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, yeah, no education. Yeah, he like didn't go to school, right?
I think he stopped going to school in like 8th grade or something like that, maybe
Yeah,
7th
that's what
grade.
I think it's 8th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next, there was the Abelwath murder and assault. The detectives arrived and found, you guessed it, more shoe prints. This time on the kitchen floor, but it wasn't the normal Avia shoe, but it was the same size as the Avia shoe. They also found a 25 shell on the floor, matching the gun from the last murder. A murder that I did not mention, which was of Peter and Barbara Pan. He did his normal and shot Peter in the head with a 25, then raped and tortured Barbara. She was left alive. He wearily scrawled Jack the Knife into the wall and a pentagram into the wall with red lipstick. Richard left another shoe print of his now famous Avia shoes at the scene. This was used to connect the murder to him. Before he entered the Smith's house, he tried to burglarize another home, this time of James Romero Jr. As luck would have it, James was outside grabbing a pillow from the car. When Ramirez crept up, James noticed some rustling and rushed to find out what it was. Richard decided it would be best to flee and not take any chances. James rushed around the house to see who it was, thinking it was a thief, and noted the make, color, and license plate of the car. It was an orange Toyota. It was time for Richard to enter the Smith's house. The detectives found the ransacking, shell casing, and the same details of the assault. Richard even identified himself as the Night Stalker. They knew it was the same person. It was finally time for someone to identify him. A tip came in that someone who frequented the bus stop knew the name of the person who the media had called the Night Stalker. The guy said he was named Rick and was from Texas. He also named the person who Richard was fencing his stuff to. They staked out the fence's house but would not find Richard there. They tracked down a lady who bought jewelry that Richard had fenced. She gave them the name of the Armando who was the fence who sold the jewelry. They placed him under arrest under suspicion of helping Richard Ramirez. Armando only then gave up Richard's last name. He said it was Richard Ramirez. This was the time the detectives had a full name. The detectives found a prior arrest of Richard Munoz Ramirez using a brand new Japanese ID system that California had just purchased. A fingerprint on an orange Toyota they have found abandoned in Koreatown after they were tipped off by James Romero was used to match the Night Stalker with the original arrest. They then got the mugshot picture of Richard Ramirez and showed it to Armando. He confirmed that it was him, the Night Stalker. Now it was time to release the picture. And boom, there was his picture out for everyone to see. His name and face was in every newspaper and news stream. He could not hide.
Damn.
Whoop whoop. Yeah.
Oh, I scared Willow.
Yee! Oh, Willow,
They
princess.
they went and shook down like a lot of these people. Like this lady they had randomly found had jewelry from one of the other persons that was murdered. And so they found her, can't remember how they found her, but they just were shaking down people, got her name, found her, and then she was like, I don't really know. I just know that the person's name was Rick, and that had fenced the stuff,
Rick.
and everyone called him Rick, and like I guess he said that his name was Rick to everybody, and so they traced. She was like, well, you should go to where I bought this from, and so Armando was that guy. And then Armando was like, I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm not going to talk to you detectives. I'm sorry. And they were like, oh, really? You're not going to talk to us, huh? And he was like, no, I'm not going to talk to you. I don't talk to police. And they're like, all right, you're under arrest for helping aid and abet a serial killer. And so they took him downtown. They're like, cool, you're not going to talk to us. We're just going to put you in jail. And so he sat in jail for a little bit, and then
he said, actually,
yeah, they were just like, all right, well, you're
Now
gonna
that you mention
they're like,
it.
you're gonna spend a good amount of time in here, so good luck. And he was like, actually, I do know that guy's last name. His name is Richard Ramirez. Richard,
Richard. Yes, that Richard.
Yeah, that guy.
Oh.
And they're like, cool. Thank you. We're gonna look this up. So then they looked up all the information, and yeah, they had just bought that Japanese ID system that just came over to them, and it was in Sacramento. So they found that one. James Romero told them about the orange Toyota, which he had seen and got the information for it. The detectives found that in Koreatown, like 2 or 3 days later after that. Koreatown, a place in LA. And then they found, apparently Richard Ramirez had wiped it down so crazily, so good, because he was like super, he knew that they were coming after him at this point. So he wiped it down really, really good as fast as he could, but he missed one single fingerprint. And it was on the rear view mirror. And they found it. And we're like, perfect. We know that he's got a prior arrest, because another guy that they had interrogated told them that if you look up this one arrest, it was him. It was a guy at the bus station knew about that. Said this one prior arrest was the one thing that you'll find, and probably be able to find his last name, because he didn't know it at the time.
Never
So
adjust your mirrors.
Yep, they looked it up and couldn't find the arrest. And then finally, once they found the fingerprint, they were able to go back and then match it with the prior arrest. And then they got the mugshot from that arrest and found out that it was him. The guy was like, cool, all right, time to go to the police. There was a huge argument in between detectives, and I know Selena probably knows this. All the detectives and all like the were arguing about whether they should release it or not, the mugshot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On Friday, August 30th, 1985, Richard stepped on a Greyhound bus going to Tucson, Arizona to visit his brother Robert, who had moved to Arizona. Mulling around the bus station, waiting for his brother to get back to his house so he could go visit him. He started seeing undercover cops coming into the bus station. LAPD had found out his brother lived in Arizona and figured that eventually Richard would make his way over there to visit. Richard decided it might be a good idea to leave, and since he didn't have enough money to get back to El Paso, he bought a ticket back to LA. Throughout the nighttime ride back to LA, he stared out the window, getting a weird prickly feeling on the back of his neck. To him, something wasn't feeling right. The bus pulled into the station in LA, and looking around before getting off, Richard could see 15 undercover officers. Those officers were focused on all the buses going out and not the ones coming in. He slipped through the terminal and back onto the streets. It was very hot in LA that day, so he stopped into a liquor store. He bought some coffee and a pastry.
The fuck?
At a liquor store.
I know. I was like, it's so hot. Why are you buying coffee and a pastry at a liquor store?
There are so many things wrong with this. First off, it's so hot right now. I need coffee and a pastry. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Second off,
Iced coffee.
What liquor store in the country can you go to
Sells coffee
where
and
you can
pastries?
find
Yeah.
coffee and a fucking pastry? Like, what kind of... That's some...
I've never seen that at a liquor store.
Like, y'all, all right, you know what? I'm sorry, but we cannot release part 4 of this episode because Asheville will literally make a new business that is a liquor store, pastry, coffee shop. If we release this, there will be
They're just gonna open up a
our liquor store
Starbucks at an
pastries.
ABC.
Shit. God.
Yeah,
Damn it, Selena, you're
Starbucks is gonna
right.
take it. Yeah, Starbucks is gonna take it. So
Oh my god, he's a hipster.
He's been a hipster this whole fucking time. Like, I
Yes.
really hope I'm not the only one that's realizing this. Like, he's been a hipster this whole...
No, it just hit me. He's just a
He's,
hipster.
like, his hair, immaculate. His face, immaculate. His car choices, immaculate. His teeth, his hair's immaculate. And his teeth are immaculate.
He's just a hipster. That's pretty much it. Yeah. Yeah, so he decided to go get some coffees and pastries just like any other hipster would do in LA when it's hot. Two older ladies were looking at him and said, El Matador, which in Spanish means the killer.
Yeah.
Looking around confused, Richard looked at a newspaper and saw his face on the front page. Okay, guys, this is getting good.
Y'all, this shit's about
Before
to heat
he
up.
could even run out of the store, the manager called the cops. He started running down the street and jumped fences and ran through backyards. Getting close to the Santa Ana freeway, he rushed across, almost being hit by several cars. Once he got across the freeway, he grabbed a bus going south. As soon as he sat down, people started pointing at him. Everyone knew who he was. He hopped off the bus as it stopped and made his way down another street. He decided that it was time to steal a car and go to Mexico because that's the answer for everything.
Little late.
Continuing down the streets, people were calling the police and recognizing him. Police sirens and helicopters were all around. Teenage boys started following him, but he turned around and said, I have a gun. Get the fuck away from me. He needed a car. As he was walking, he saw a woman in a running car. Manuela Villanueva was in the car waiting for her boyfriend, who was buying tamales and coffee at a grocery store. Richard walked up to the car and said, Mataron a mi mamá, or my mother has died. He tried to pull her out of the car, but just at the moment, her boyfriend Carmela and Arthur, who was a barber, came running out of the building. Richard ran away and jumped a few fences. He ended up losing Carmela and Arthur. Getting tired and near the end of his rope, Richard walked onto Hubbard Street.
Woo woo.
This is like a whole
Hubbard.
thing. Like,
I grew up near
there's
Hubbard.
no way out of this.
Yep.
Oh, then you saw him.
Yeah. I wasn't born yet, but okay.
Oh, that's right. This is way before you. But yeah, there's just like no way out. Everyone knows who he is. He's freaking out. He's just jumping fences, trying to steal cars, but he can. Like he's his time out, you know? This is the cool part, because this block was made of mostly Mexican Americans, and the word had spread like wildfire on this street. And one thing about Mexicans or Mexican Americans is that you don't mess with those people. Like, if they know you've done something bad, they will come and get you. He hopped a fence and ended up in the backyard of Luis Munoz. Luis was cooking hamburgers in the backyard and holding a spatula. He asked Richard, what are you doing back here? Richard was just too tired and couldn't answer, so Luis started whacking Richard with the spatula. Like, of course.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
you're not invited.
It's coming.
Like, what are you doing here? What? Richard then stumbled away as fast as he could and jumped into the next neighbor's yard. This was the yard of Faustino. There was a red Mustang in the front of the driveway that was running, which was Faustino's daughter's car. Richard, getting excited as he saw the running car, tried to jump into the car and steal it, but as he tried to drive away, Faustino grabbed the wheel and steered into the chimney part of the house. Faustino then jumped back up and grabbed the keys and threw them on the ground and said, You cannot take this car.
Yeah.
After this, Richard decided to run away again. He jumped another fence and was gone.
It was so great.
Oh
He
my
was like a
gosh.
hero moment for Faustina because
Mhm.
he was like, "This is my daughter's car, and you will not take this car." He's like,
Mhm.
"You will never get this car from me." And Richard was like,
He went
"Uh-oh."
into the wrong
He
neighborhood.
did. He
Mhm.
really did.
Yeah. Like, he's just making all these mistakes. Like, hello, like, you're going into a Mexican American neighborhood. Like,
Yeah, we don't need
there's no way they're
police.
gonna
We are
help
the
you.
police.
Mhm.
Exactly. We're the police here. We don't need no help from the cops. We
Yep.
got this. Running down the street, Richard saw Angela de la Torre getting in front of her car in front of her house. Richard thought this was the way he needed to go to get out of trouble. She saw him and started yelling, El Matador! He punched her in the stomach and took the keys. Jumping into the car, he put the keys in the ignition and was getting ready to drive away. Angela's neighbor was sitting in the car at the time and hopped out to help Angela. One of her other neighbors, who was watering the lawn at this time, heard the cries and with his son ran over to see what was going on. He got behind the car and asked Richard, "What are you doing?" As if from the perfect timing, Manuel, Angela's husband, strode out of the backyard with a metal pipe
Oh,
with
hell
the
yeah.
end shaped like an L,
Yes.
almost like a tire iron.
Woo!
Manuel ran up to the car, opened the door, and struck Richard in the head with the pipe.
Oh,
What a hero.
damn, that had to feel
Mhm.
good.
Just then, Richard sprang out of the car and ran away as if it was a movie, Cries of El Matador, down the
Shit.
street.
Shit.
Manuel and the neighbor's son started chasing Richard down the street. Manuel swung the bar again but missed. Getting closer to Richard as he was getting exhausted, Manuel swung the bar one more time and bam, hit him right in the head. Then
Yeah.
Manuel stood over top of him and said, "Go ahead and get up, man. Get up and you're dead." Richard
Oh,
was on the receiving end of everything he had done
yes.
to other
Fuck
people.
yes.
He was getting his karma. The first police officer on the scene was also named Ramirez, Deputy Ramirez.
Confusing.
The medevac team arrived and cleaned up Richard's 2 wounds on his head. The LAPD officers placed Richard under arrest. They sat him down on the curb and asked him, "Are you Richard Ramirez?" Richard replied, defeated, "Yeah, I'm Richard
The
Ramirez."
whole fucking time the medevac team's just like, no, it's totally normal for us to put salt in these wounds. Like, this is a
Mhm.
normal, this is how we sanitize them. Does that sting? Oh, that means it's working. That means it's working. I'm just gonna
Yes.
rub some more fucking Morton salt into this fucking shit right here.
Have you ever heard of the healing powers of hot sauce?
Yo, but like one of
Yes.
the most fucking like iconic. Like, you don't need a movie if you've ever heard this, if you've ever read this. You don't need a fucking movie. Like, this is one of the most iconic capture scenes
Yeah.
in history. I don't care if it's a fucking like mythological god. I don't care who the fuck it is. Anybody across history, this is one of the most iconic conclusion scenes just in history.
Yes.
Dude gets the fucking shit beaten out of him by the neighborhood he's been fucking with. Not just that, but they have the most iconic weapons in history. Who literally
Yes.
has an L-shaped pipe on hand to beat the fuck out of somebody? I'm just saying, you might have a
I
lead
know, I
pipe,
love that.
but like the classic boop 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 boop, like fucking like Mario kind of shit, like an L-shaped pipe to just bow bow bow. I'm sorry, Selena, I gotta say, beating the fuck out of somebody with a spatula is a new desire I have in life. I really hope that the gun range that we go to includes new targets specifically for us to bring our spatulas. That's all I wanted to say.
I know. The only thing that was missing was like grandma or some mom coming out with the chancla, and that would
Chancla,
have been
just
like complete.
But there were grandmas
Yes.
on the side of the street yelling, "El Matador, El Matador, El Matador," as he
Yeah,
was
like
running down the street.
they literally like beat the shit out of him and then like
Yes.
stood on top of him
Yes.
and like held him down, and like
I love it.
when the cops came, he was like begging them to like take him away from these people.
Yes. Yes. I'm here for this shit.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, because after noticing how the crowd was looking, they decided to put him in the police car and take him to the home back station.
That's
This was
terrible.
against normal protocol
Yeah.
because they would normally take him to the district in which he was caught. And the police car, Richard said, "Why don't you just shoot me now? I'm going to be taken to the electric chair, and all the killings are going to be blamed on me."
Mm-hmm.
If a neighborhood in LA says, nope, back of the police car, you really fucked up. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. They wanted to kill him too. They once
Yeah,
they
that's why
like
they
once
moved him.
I
yeah,
know.
they moved him to another spot, and they were just like, "Oh, this guy is going to be murdered, and we're not going to be able to take him
That was
and
probably
put him on trial."
that was like the reverends and the police, or the reverends and the preachers and the fucking rabbis were like, no, let's be peaceful after we beat the fuck out of him and put him in the back
Well, the
of
police,
a him in the back of a cop car. Like they, after they got some hits in with their L-shaped pipe, they were like, we're just gonna set him in the back of a cop car.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the station, the detective observed Richard and took notes. As Richard was wondering what had happened and why Satan had abandoned him, he started banging his head against the table and humming "The Night Prowler" by AC/DC. Richard started begging for a gun so he could shoot himself, and then begging for the detective to shoot him. The detective just wrote down everything he said in silence. Like,
That's
he was
what I
like, this
love.
guy is fucking nuts.
I love that the detective was just like looking at him and just he was
Like, okay, weirdo.
he was told not to say anything by the other detectives and just watch him. So he just sat there, and while he's banging his head with humming "The Night Prowler," the
Are
detective's
you
just
there?
like,
Are you there,
"Mhm."
Satan? It's me, Richard.
I would just be laughing. I'd be like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, what the fuck?
And here comes the
so,
heroes, the detectives.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Gil Carrillo and Frank Salerno were the detectives on the case. Frank Salerno was a legend who had caught two LA based serial killers before, cousins Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Bueno, or better known as the Hillside Strangler.
Yep.
They have been there since almost the beginning, finding clues and chasing down leads. They arrived at the station and went into their room together. They took off the cuffs of Richard and put down a tape recorder. Richard wasn't in the mood to talk about the murders, so he talked about his family instead. Gil Carrillo started talking to Richard in Spanish, which was easier and made Richard feel more comfortable. Richard went through his family history of how he was beaten and his cousin Miguel and his teachings. After a break in the conversation, Richard said, "I want a lawyer," and said no more. The detectives wanted to get a confession out of Richard so they would not have to bring the defendants and their families to court to relieve the horrendous experience. Under heavy guard, they moved him to a car to take him to LA County Jail. The detectives were afraid that somebody would come from the crowd with a gun and try to kill Richard. He was moved to LA County Jail and put into a solitary room. Richard, alone and in jail, knew that Satan had left him. He thought about what he had done to be left out in the cold without his protection. Richard wondered, was I too weak? Did I fail him in some
Was I
way?
too insecure?
Well,
Did I
well.
focus too much on his
What was it my
exes?
teeth?
Yeah. Like, was it my bio? Was I too insecure? Was it my exes? Was it my BO?
My mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why does Satan
Is
not
it my
love me
hair?
anymore?
Was it my BO?
So Frank Salerno was like a legend, and because he caught the two Hillside Stranglers, so how he caught them was so crazy. He found a tiny piece of thread in the eyelid of the second victim, and it led him
Wow.
back to the upholstery shop of the cousins Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Bueno. and they killed and raped 10 women. So like he noticed every single tiny detail, and he used that to go into this one. And so the Avia shoe was one of the huge details that he found that linked all the murders, then as well as the fingerprint at the top of the mirror, which like completely linked it together. So yeah.
Salerno, like, no knocking him, is the epitome of the detective who has that, like, amphetamine driven perspective on things. Like, he literally is like, did you notice that? And then everybody's just like, what are you talking about? And he's like, that speck of dust, if you hold the camera at just this angle. And like, that's the fucking thing that cracks the goddamn case. Like, Salerno
yeah.
is the epitome of a super cop. And like,
Mm-hmm.
no offense to anybody, but a lot of offense to some occupations. Not a fan of cops, but Salerno is literally one of these motherfuckers that's out there doing the fucking job and getting shit done. At least from what I know. All right, that's just what I know. He might have done some fucked up shit, but like Salerno handles shit, and like the way he does is so. All I can say is he invented Adderall. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yep. Yep. Well, Gilbert Carrillo, because his name was Gilbert.
Respect.
Yep.
Respect.
He was what they called like a mad. He was what they called a mad dog. So like he was like a person that like he would get into them, and like he would get the answers that they needed, and that's why Frank Salerno loved having him with him and them working together, because before this
Teamwork.
they never worked together, and both of them when they got
they had a bromance.
they did, because like they told it's said that like homicide detectives and murder detectives spend more times with their partners than their family, because they're getting calls at like 2:30 a.m. and a lot of these calls for them were like they would get a call at like 1 a.m. and they'd be like, all right, they wake up, they go to the they'd go and visit the murder where the murder happened, and like there was a bunch of detectives on call. So like these two were the main detectives, and they were the ones that found like put it all together. But there were a bunch of detectives that went to the original murder house, the eventual victims' houses, and found these things. They just came in later and would come and say, "Hey, like what happened here? What things do we need to look at?" And then they'd go deeper and find the next part.
Yeah. So now that Richard has been caught and thrown in jail, he was having women fawn over him, and they would send him letters wanting to be with him. He was a jail heartthrob and was on his way to conviction. He was convicted of 13 murders and put in jail for life. Richard was not killed by the electric chair, but died of complications of B-cell lymphoma on June 7, 2013. He was 53 years old, and as Queen would say, another one bites the dust. Or this time, another demon found his highway to hell.
Yes.
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 Yay.
He got justice, but he didn't get the electric chair, which is
Hey, you know what?
Yeah, I mean, he died of that's cancer, right? So he slowly, painfully
did.
died of
Yeah.
cancer because jail does not give a shit about you. They are not going to
No.
pay for you to have
No.
a comfortable experience with
Yeah.
cancer.
Yeah, he had a slow death.
Yeah.
So another way that they found some more evidence against him too, which I thought was very interesting, after he hopped off the bus, when he was coming back from Arizona to LA, he was looking at the area and saw those undercover cops. He had a bag with him, but he couldn't get the bag because he was like, well, they're gonna see me if I go find bags. So he ran out. So they, in his pocket when they arrested him, they found the slip for one of the bags. Yeah, they keep they give you a slip,
Yeah.
like a ticket with the bag, so like he can
What
find
was
it.
in
So
the-
they found it, and the bag, yes, what was in it?
Sorry.
They found the tiny ticket,
You got me.
and they went to the terminal, and they found a jar of Vaseline, as one would,
Okay, that's fair.
a black pair of Stadia, a black pair of Stadia shoes, which he used
Same.
in some of the
I have
murders.
that, yeah.
Yep, a 32-20 revolver,
Same. Okay, I've got that.
a box of 32-20 ammunition.
You need that for the other one. Yeah.
Yep, 22 ammunition.
I don't got that.
.25 ammunition.
I don't have that either.
And there was a bunch of pliers and a bunch of other little
Okay,
things in there.
that's
So basically
sus.
anything.
That's sus. And you know what? Fuck that motherfucker. Fuck the Bill of Rights. Arrest that piece of shit. That's all I'm saying. Pliers?
So,
what are you
yes,
doing,
pliers.
my sir?
Yes. And some Vaseline, you know.
God
Very sus. Very
damn
sus.
it. Sus
So
Very
ass.
sus.
they use those to they use the ammunition in the 25 to match it to the ammunition that he was using in the other murder. So that helped them kind of coalesce the evidence too. Also, after they captured Richard's brother Reuben took the two detectives to get Richard's old car, which was a 1976 green Pontiac with a flat tire and a damaged right front fender. He drew a pentagram again on the dashboard. And they took it in, and they found a piece of cheap handcuffs, and they also found his fingerprints in the car. So this also helped him with that, being like, oh, he has a tendency to draw pentagrams on the dashboard.
On literally anything he touches.
Yep. Yeah. They also the car that you remember that we talked about that they had impounded and the detectives never got to look at, the one he had stolen.
Ago. Yeah.
Years ago, he had stolen, and one of the police officers pulled him over and made the jokes about it. Yeah. So he painted the thing on the dashboard there too. They matched those two. Also, the detectives found out that had happened. After they had found out that it had happened and it was an impounded, it had already been given back to the original owners. So they never got to see the car that they could have found him. What, 8-9 murders earlier?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the end of Richard Ramirez.
Oh, collective
Thank
sigh of
God.
relief. Ooh, like,
Yeah, we can rest now.
yeah. God.
I love the hero moments in this, honestly. Just the moment of him standing over top of him, looking at him like, make a move and I'll kill you. He actually wanted to go in and get his gun and shoot him right there. But his wife, but Angela was like, no. Let them arrest him or else you're going to go to jail too.
Good call.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I said he went into the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah.
You don't mess with those
You
people,
mess with the
especially in
wrong
LA.
people, motherfucker.
Thank you so much for listening to our 4-part series on Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, full of harrowing moments, and at the end, downright Marvel-style heroic moments. We hope you rode the roller coaster with us. Don't forget to like, review, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Also, keep up with us on Instagram. There you can find all the latest news. Next week, we're excited to start a 2-parter episode. Gil is hard at work researching. So until next week, we'll see you on the other side.